welcome to the part 2 of the Raver podcast episode, where we're discussing integrating your shadow. And for the start of this, I want to start out with a story. This was mentioned in a book I read, The 4-Day Loss of Power, which I've been talking a lot about lately, I suppose. But anyways, so there's a doctor, a marriage counselor, a marriage therapist, and only the woman or the wife is coming to these sessions, and the therapist knows that, look, the only way this couple's therapy is going to work if 2 people come. The couple comes, to this. So he sets up a little plan where he starts giving false interpretations of what the husband is doing, knowing that it will drive the husband crazy, and the husband will become really angry at I don't do that because of this. And he will want to set the record straight and come to the therapy to basically give his side of the argument.
That's true.
So in a way, that's the therapist does this, and it happens, and it's exactly what the therapist wants. So let's talk about lying, how it's not always, nothing is so black and white. And, he is lying in that situation, but he's lying for good in a way. And it made me think how in order to judge a person, I think you should judge on the kind of actions or the impact of their behavior rather than their intentions. Your intentions can be as good as pie, but if it has negative effects, you need to take responsibility for the effects, not saying that my intentions were somewhere else.
Yeah, because at the end, what you live with is the consequences of those actions, and also, intentions change. At one point you have certain intentions, can be good or bad, but then let's say if you think more thoroughly, or maybe you start having some different feelings about it, then your intentions totally change. It's something that, for instance, is still inside of you, so not making any effect, but then when you act upon it, what remains there is the consequences of those actions that you cannot change for the good or for the bad.
Yeah. So, and also I want to bring this up to the table. You weren't here, but we were discussing how I believe love and hate are really the same thing. Yeah. Because minus 15 and 15 plus 15, they're the same thing. In the end of the day, it's still 15, and the opposite of love is actually indifference, and that's the opposite of hate as well, meaning 0. So, and to put it in mathematical terms, I can do a lot of calculations with minus 15, and I can do as many calculations as I can with plus 15 as I can with minus 15, the same amount, but I can't do a lot with 0. There isn't that much you can do. There isn't really much at all. But anyway, so the point is that living your life despite whatever you do, I think it's important to have some sort of an impact, some sort of even if it's a negative impact, it's better than 0, in a way. I would say it is better than 0, because what comes to mind is Hitler, is that he did a minus 200, let's say. But without having that, would we be better off if it never happened? Because for every bad experience, there's also lessons to be learned. And now we know what are the extent of human evil in a way, and the extent of Well, I think was it retrospectively? I'm not sure was it a good or bad thing. Or it's not automatic to me that it was it should have never happened. You know what I mean?
But things happened, and history is there, and not for you to like it, not for you to hate it, but for you to learn from it. And I think, well, those were horrible things. And something that, okay, now if we back then, if we had the mindset we have nowadays, okay, it would have been avoided, but okay, who can prevent that? So kind of we really need to start looking at history or at these kind of terrible tragedies with some sort of a perspective. Okay, hey, not getting mega how do I put it, like not losing our head from it. Of course it was horrible, it's completely like judgeable, definitely, but also kind of we need to set that perspective that okay, hey, these are mistakes that we should not repeat, like in the present and also in the future. Yeah, and also kind of we really need to start like I don't know, being vocal, especially for those negative things, so that we don't fall into the same situation again.
Yeah, and it is in a way, well, studying about the bad things that happen in history. It is also in a way integrating your shadow, because I mean, in my mind, integrating your shadow is all about looking into bad things and the negative side of humanity to draw some lessons, so that once you encounter it, then you know how to act and you know how to deal with that.
Indeed. So. And then and it's a way to put yourself into perspective and to recognize, okay, hey, I have this dark side. I need to make peace of it. I need to put myself into perspective and say, hey, well, I'm human and going through these different emotions, like, and in this case, let's say negative emotions. I understand from where do they come from and how do I act upon them. Yeah, like a bit the same as what we talked about outwardly, but in this case inwardly. And that's the real game. That's the real integrating your shadow. Yeah, like realizing that, hey, like you are not just a paradigm of good things, but hey, you're human. You have all these negative feelings and negative thoughts.
Yes.
And you really need to think, okay, hey, from where do they come from? Do I need to act upon them? Can I help them somehow?
And I think the best time to do it is when you are still sane. That you are still sane and you can still hold control over those negative thoughts and emotions and not let them take over you. I would like to refer back to your story of 0, minus, and plus. 0 can be a gateway to the minus. Mass shooter. The commonality among mass shooters is that they don't care anything else about this world. That's the 0. The 0 for me represents that nihilistic thoughts that nothing in this world matters anymore. That's the testament and epitome that 0 represents. Nothing, 0 thing in this world matters anymore. Therefore, there will be no consequence if I traverse the negative, the 0, to the minus, I mean. That's where they act in a mass shooting way. Negative impact. 0 to me can be the gateway to those one. And because humans share a collective of negative emotion and negative thoughts, you share with me a story that you have read the journal of a mass shooter and you feel to a certain extent understand his thought.
Yeah.
And you manage to see his point of view as the negative of humanity. But you are, at that point of reading it, still sane, integrated, so you can exercise somewhat of control, rationalism over that negative, that shadowy side of humanity, and not.
Well, to like refer back, I read the manifesto of the Columbine shooter, if you heard of that. It was a thing that happened in America, and it made me like, that's what was saying. It was saying a lot about how everything is so meaningless.
Yeah, that's
and
0 in my eyes.
But it made me look. I, in a way, understand that, or like I feel the same way, but on a positive end of the spectrum, where everything is really, we are really meaningless at the end of the day, we as people, or like me, or like how the world is so vast and we don't have that much of an impact at the end of the day. But it can be a positive outlook as well, because then none of your worries really matter.
Yeah.
Because it's such a you're being ridiculous if you like. Okay, I was in an airport and the plane was 2 hours late, and I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And this business guy got really upset. I was just going like, who? Like, what are you mad about? It's just the world is what it is. Things happen. There's no utility of you expressing your like anger. And also, who are you that you think that? Don't you appreciate the complexity of the whole air traffic and air control and all this stuff? I don't know. It made me really feel you're really ungrateful if you get upset at the plane being a couple of hours late. Yeah, it doesn't really impact. But to go back on the point, the mass shooter point, it's it was really startling to realize that me and that shooter are in a way the same. You know what I mean? Or we have similar types of outlooks similar outlook in a way. So
trust me, it will be shared with a lot more people. That's collective. That's something that is collective.
Yeah.
But now you also realize that from the same collective prototype, it can pull people really down to the depth of their psyche.
Yeah, it's the depths of human evil and the depths of like, it's really startling. If you start to kind of, what's the saying? You stare at the abyss, it stares back at you in a way as well. So it's quite shocking.
And to see two persons with similar thoughts, but what it comes down is everything comes down to decision making. So the mass shooter decides to act upon those thoughts and feelings, but on the contrary, let's say in this case, you put yourself as an example, you didn't choose to act upon. So back to what we talk about. Okay, hey, in the end, what we should judgment like upon their actions and the consequences of them. This is actually an example. Like in the end, is that's the result. That then, the mass shooter commits, executes, and then the consequences is something that cannot get back, because you just went to a school and you just killed tens and hundreds of people, and then you cannot revert that back. But then from the person who decide not to act upon it, like you can get the time to reflect, like, okay, hey, these are not kind of super positive thoughts, like, hey, you can, your intentions can be reverted back. Like,
and you can express those angsty feelings and bad feelings in a good way. Like in art, for example, I've heard a lot of artists who are really they're depressed, but they take out their angst on their art. So it is a healthy way to express. Of course, I think the best way is to not have those. Like you were talking about having the inner dialogue be healthy. I do believe, like when I say that the inner dialogue doesn't really matter, like the ultimate goal is that you have a good like inner dialogue, a really healthy one, and you can achieve that, especially when it comes to thoughts about yourself. But it's not something that the bad thoughts are always going to be there in a way, and you can't rely on, let's say, it's sort of like relying on motivation, like, I'll walk when I'm motivated, which is not realistic at all. So you can't, I think you can still be happy even though you have a bad inner dialogue if you do happy things.
I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I disagree with that. It's almost like you are inauthentic, or you haven't found a real authenticity of you that pull you into the great alignment of your inner world and your actions. There may be that kind of alignment.
But I feel there's the saying that the body and the mind is linked. So I think if you the actions and the thoughts are linked as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're unhappy and you start doing actions which happy people do, you're gonna become happy, I think. And also the same works the other way.
Maybe it's a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, but also then how can we explain a huge taboo topic that nowadays is being more spoken about, that it is depression? Because we just see plenty of people that apparently on the picture they are doing happy things, but inside of them they are just miserable. So
yeah, you're putting a front on the
yeah, and that's the real losing battle of integrating their shadow, because actually those people live with the shadow. Actually the shadow is dominating them.
Yeah, they're being controlled by, but they're not seeing I don't know, it's so it's hard to understand it, because I don't know, I have never been depressed, or not clinically at least.
Not clinically.
Clinically, no. But it's hard to understand because I've really thought about this. Depression in general is, when I was unemployed and looking for my first software gig, I was really unhappy. I wasn't happy about it. I don't know if it was depression, but I would just take out my anger and angst in other ways, in just healthy ways in a way. But there was a lot of anger and angst and depression. So I don't know. I feel if you're depressed, you can also take it out in a healthy way. You can always choose to express your emotions in healthy ways. Doesn't matter what your inner dialogue is.
And why do you choose it? Why do you choose it to express it in a healthy way? Perhaps because inner you, there holds a dialogue or belief that there's a good way to solve this out. Meanwhile, if other people hold a different belief, a more nihilistic one, a more negative one, maybe they will express the anger in a more destructive way.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you repeat back on it?
There's a connections between your emotion and your actions, and the medium for translating that, I think it's a layers of psychic activities
and destruction, and it doesn't necessarily be the kind of super obvious destructive behavior towards other people, but kind of to yourself. Maybe, of course, you are depressed, but you are good and nice to other people, as in many cases that I have seen. But for yourself, you are being super destructive because maybe you start abusing alcohol or abusing sugar or abusing
diabetes. Yes.
Yeah.
Binge eating.
Yeah. So
I can try to paraphrase what I say is that a same source of psychic data, depression, anger, the same source of emotion, it maps to a different form of action. And your action is to, as you say, release it in a more healthy way. Another form of action is that destructive, break something, binge in alcohol, right? And what I see it to map the emotional data and your actions, your manifestation of what you do, there are a layer of psychic activities in between, like a layer of a neural network, if you will. And what happened at that neural network over here, it can consist of your self-dialogue, your belief that transform, transmute, and process this psychic data into the actions. I hope I draw the picture that you can understand. Maybe you have a very healthy neural network that managed to transform that into a positive actions.
Yeah. So you're talking when depression, it's an actual physiological. Depressed people have different brains, Is that what we use? And they have a neural network which is more conductive to depressive behavior or like in negative self-destructive behaviors.
Yeah. It's like input, neural network is like a black box processing, and the actions is the output.
Somehow different chemical composition. Okay, first of all, I want to make clear, especially for the audience, that this is just a casual discussion. I mean, we are not psychiatrists or anything like that. We are not giving any advice. We are just putting our take on when it comes to those topics. So yeah, just to, as to be safe, no misleading or generating any negative emotions in the audience.
Okay.
but kind of I agree with Tri in that sense that like people who are suffering from these kind of mental health issues, the brains, or that's what I have read from different like scientific sources, that like they have different chemical composition, different structure, because after all the brain is more malleable. It takes different shapes depending on the user you give. In this case, I mean, depressed people have a different like a structure, and in this case, let's say a different like kind of disposition of the neural network. In that sense, I mean, extrapolating it in that way.
Would it? I mean, if let's say I'm depressed and I have that kind of a neural network which is really bad, then if you do happy things, it's gonna be fixing itself. No? Yes?
How do you do itself? How do you have conscious control over your actions?
Because you see,
because that neural network still actually leads you to that path.
I don't like that kind of thinking, because it's taking away your free will in a way, that your
free will. Everything is impacted. Your will is impacted. Yes, you have
it's impacted, but it's not taken over. You still have it, but it's still
you have exercise the choice.
Yeah, you have all the capabilities that let's say you're not clinically depressed. You still have all the capabilities, but it's not. You can. I don't know.
But my view, or even argument, is that there's a sophisticated and convoluted neural complex that leads you to believe that you can still have the choice to take happy actions, which has been processed by a part of your neural network, which can be positive in a sense, which is the brain, the central processing unit of us.
Yeah, but
wow, we come into a very interesting territory.
We do.
Because it's nowadays something that is coming to the surface. Every time people are being more vocal about this kind of mental health issues, and it's actually we are the real epidemic. Is some mental health problems, and like kind of.
What do you think that is?
That's the real kind of losing the battle with your shadow. Because imagine, I mean, I'm not in the capacity to speak for depressed people, because I never. I don't really know what's going on in their heads, but I bet like that battle between when it comes to you and your shadow, in that sense they lose it and they are stuck. And imagine being in a situation where there is, let's say you are in a fight and you can choose either to run away or to face and fight back. And somehow these people, they're stuck. They're
stuck
like
in between, you mean? Or like
imagine like, okay, you are kind of losing the battle, but you cannot run away.
But I feel you can fight. It doesn't matter if you're fighting a losing battle. It's still the action of fighting is what counts, right?
Exactly, and that's why, for instance, psychotherapy try to impulse to that people, like at least like have the fight. I mean,
I also have to point out the fact that it's so easy to speak from an outsider and not be in this situation and feel and experience all of those emotions and thoughts. It's so easy to be an outsider and just stop.
I'm gonna say this. I think it's often used as an excuse, or it's often. I don't know why it would be. Why can't I talk about it in a way? Because, like, why? like when you say it's easy to look at it from the outside, staring at it.
That's why we also need an outsider. Actually, that's why we also need an outsider to have that impartial and not infused with experience perspective. Yeah,
I don't know. I feel depression as a, like, the thing is this: it wasn't a concept even like what, couple 50 decades or like 50 years ago. So it's just, I feel we've been kind of, I mean, this is going on another topic, but I feel like mental illness is often like made up. It's not a real thing. It's just you have to go through life, and that involves a certain amount of mental anguish. So it's just this going through life. So yeah, everyone has the shadow side, or the, like, whenever you're trying to live by your life or go through your life and not to encounter your shadow side, it's kind of an unrealistic feel. Yeah,
like kind of, as you say, also like some of the mental health issues can be also like infused by coping mechanisms. They are the result of coping mechanisms. Let's say like we can, let's say, attention deficit, like ADHD, like, maybe those people just grew up in very stressful environments, and the way to abstract themselves away from there was just by focusing on some of the things at the same time, jumping from one place to another. So just a coping mechanism to survive that stressful environment.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then like some people, they just go through life not really facing that shadow, that okay, hey, well, like my mind is jumping from one place to another is because I don't really want to face the fact that, hey, this is what has been happening, this is the anguish. Okay, how do I deal with this? How do I manage with messages of error that life has given me and is giving me?
Yeah, I think a lot of our, like, I think a healthy thing to do, or one thing which changed my life, is when I was about 25, I wrote about the experiences I had in my childhood, and it gave me a lot of insight to who I am as a person. Once you start really, like, when you're experiencing it, it's really tough to kind of look from the outside. But once, let's say, you
revisit that memory.
Yeah, you revisit it. Then there's something to learn from it. And I also, I heard the term, if a memory upsets you, and you still constantly think about it, you haven't learned your lesson about it. So, and that's what you need to do to kind of dissolve it. So yeah, a big thing that.
Writing is a very beautiful and useful and powerful thing for us to integrate that shadow, to put us into perspective. I mean, when you write, especially when you are in those moments of anguish, desperation, anger, even happiness as well, love, etc., like, writing actually really helps us to process all of that and to put it in a kind of a logical and structured way. Because sometimes when we are feeling those kind of emotions, either positive or negative, everything is just in a disorganized way. That's why, I don't know, why we lost the tradition of diarying, of like writing down or writing letters. Like, let's say in your case, like, you're a great example. I mean, that helped you to go through those shadows that you were encountering, like, especially during your childhood. So
yeah, it's any activity that lets you be basically the narrator of your story, which is what you're doing when you're writing. It's really healthy for you, and writing is the way to do that. But also you can just, there's writing is my way, and I think it's a common way. I can't think of any other examples, but there are surely.
For some people it's writing, for some other people
voice recording. I noticed some people do the voice recording, so they speak out loud.
Some people do podcasting.
Yeah, as well. Or some people play instruments. I mean, also like music therapy is proven super helpful. So yeah, kind of there are different ways to, integrate your shadow, fight your shadow, and take control of it.
Fight the shadow. No, why fight? Confront it and then invite him to become a part of you.
Exactly, and take it. Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah. Recognize
It's
making peace with your shadow.
Yeah, it's the very same at Naruto and the Night Whale Fox.
Yeah.
It's the very same at Bruce Wayne and the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So it's not like fight over it, but become it. Let it become a part of the integrated self.
And I do believe, let's say you're in a war and you want to survive, you have to become the meanest, the most ruthless, the most horrifying person in there, because you're in a mean, horrifying and ruthless environment. You just have to become that to survive.
Yeah, because it's that like moments and environment also is what shapes us somehow.
Yeah, and I think with that we're gonna end the episode. Thank you so much, Raver, for coming.
Thank you
Thanks to
so
you
much,
guys.
Raver.
Thanks to Andrew, who is in the
he's in the background.
Super interesting. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
This
super interesting conversation.
In-depth conversation.
Yeah, it got super deep.
Yeah.
So, see you guys in the next episode.
And remember, keep on philosophizing.
Bye.